With that, I'd like to go around the room and everybody can identify themselves for the public.
Scott Kellogg, District 3 Alderman.
Joe Eichstadt, interim city engineer.
Todd Ferky, Alderman.
Andrew Patrick, District 5 Alderman and Secretary of Public Works.
Thank you. Item number 2, request permission to modify the pavement markings and signage at the intersections of East Grand Avenue and Third Street South and East Grand Avenue and Second Street South to reduce the number of vehicle lanes entering the intersection. Joe, you wanna kind of,
Sure.
I guess, lead us
Yep.
through?
So the primary reason, from my understanding, is there's just some confusion at these intersections with the multi-lanes entering or coming up to the intersection approaches. I've kind of laid out the exhibit here that kind of shows what we would do. Kind of starting at the top, we take the left turn lane out. That would be at the top up here by Second Street. We take that left turn lane out and move that center line striping over. And then at Third Street, we would, going east, we put the right turn only in and just modify some of this, some of the center line approach, center line markings on Third Street coming up to East Grand Avenue. And modifying a little bit here in front of the post office. To actually give the vehicles in front of the post office a little bit extra space, keep the vehicles pulled out away from the outside lane there. So the cost for this, it's not really, it's not a line item in the budget, although I did check with the street department to see if their budget would, I mean, it's no more than $3,000 to modify the markings and change the signage, and some of which has to be redone probably next year anyway, due to fading and killing off. So
When do they have a plan to do East Grand, up to the library?
2019, I think.
yeah, 2019. So.
Is it, now we've all traveled in that, I don't sense it's that confusing. I don't know, I just, and, I know it's only 3,000 or about, the 3,000 is 3,000. And you live with it, I mean, have we had any accidents? I don't think so.
I haven't checked on the accidents. I haven't heard of there being an accident problem there.
There's like, for example, here, there's a signage to turn left, there's a sign right here that you turn left to go straight. There's a sign here that goes straight here, or here you go left. There's no sign here. So if just a sign put up to turn right.
Yep.
But I guess I look at it as, in this, I don't know if that would make that big a difference, right here. And, I don't know, I don't find it that confusing. I mean, you go up there and you see those signs, and I haven't heard of an accident there, because you do have to stop and adjust that way.
Well, I guess my experience is driving down in front of the post office, coming down towards the river. When you come up right into the intersection itself, you tend to get people that will try and sneak up on your right-hand side as if there's two through lanes right there.
Right.
When I think realistically, there is only one technical
Right.
lane right there. I think that's probably from what I've always encountered down there, that right there is always the most confusing portion of, or I guess maybe the worsely designed, laid out, proportioned section, just because it is a little bit wider right there, and I don't really know why it was so much wider there than anywhere else. But are you proposing having the area here in front of the post office, I'm sorry,
That's all right.
if this is gonna be a single lane, just one lane instead of two right now?
Well, it would just, the way that the vehicles would be traveling east, when you come up to that intersection, they would be in the inside lane already.
Okay,
And then if they were coming up on Third Street, they're gonna turn.
so if you're gonna make a dedicated right, that, where it's two lanes there coming approaching the top of the hill, you make that one a right hand only, then that obviously just leaves you a single through, okay, so then
It's
it's
just
just
kind of,
one
it'd remain two lanes, it'd just be, they'd force the vehicles into the inside
into a
lane.
single inside lane. What would you do then further up, like down in front of Andy's and Solaris, the Mead, all the way up? Would you allow that to neck back out to two at some point down the road then?
Yeah, actually, right there, I mean, you could just put your blinker on and move over into that outside lane. It's just that, getting through the intersection, you're kind of funneled to the inside lane, and then
Okay.
afterwards, you could immediately go into the outside lane.
Would you be doing any type of, because I mean, I'm thinking during the winter, you don't have, the street markings aren't as easily visible at all times during the winter. So I remember up in front of, is it Michelli? What's the school up in Point? I think it's a middle school that's covered in ivy on the one side by that dock place, that boat place. Nobody? Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
know
They
what
used to
you're-
have, as you turn, like you were coming from the interstate from 39, if you turn right to go down towards the parking lots at UWSP, they had a bumped out section that had like flop over and spring back up reflectors.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is that something that you had thought about doing in there to allow that bump out to be more solidified or to make it more recognizable?
It could be done. That'd be a more aggressive approach to, moving the traffic over. It wasn't.
Wasn't considered for
Kind of
what you
with,
proposed.
with the 2019 reconstruction looming, some of this is, just for the time being. I think we repaint quite a bit of it, every year, every other year sort of thing. The only difference, I guess, that, kind of prepares for that 2019 would be the lane modification at Second. Because likely, and we'll get to that in later agenda items with the contract,
Right.
but, right now the project's gonna run from Third Street to Eighth Street. There's talk that we might try to get it extended up to the bridge. Cause the pavement in there isn't all that much better, it's newer, but it's.
Right.
That'd be the right way.
Yeah.
So
So,
stretch it once we're done
with
it.
that said, we'd be looking at the Trans 75 requirement to look at all modes of traffic, pedestrian, bicyclists, and vehicles, that we'd have the bike lanes likely painted in there, which the only way we can fit them is taking out that left turn lane at Second. So that was, one of the thoughts there, but, yeah, I don't know if there's, how much confusion there is. There has been some apparently.
Well, how come this came on our agenda? I mean, how did it surface as we should do this?
It was it was brought forth to Dave at some point. And then we've discussed it with the mayor a couple times, so it's kind of been on our plate. I guess I don't know where the original referral came from.
Sometimes it seems to me a person or persons of few raise a question because the lights are no longer there. So then all of a sudden they raise the question because now this is different. But and who knows when that happened. But now after people have used it, like I say, I think there's a couple missing signs, like going north on Third Street. But just looking at the missing signs that put in, maybe those, in my mind, would be adequate. Because I don't know if the confusion exists now, because the stoplights are gone and people are used to it. I know 4 years out before we have the renovation of this area or change of this area, but if it, like I say, $3,000 or $4,000 is $3,000 or $4,000, and put up a sign that's nothing, in a sense, we have those signs. I don't know, I just think,
Well, and there's nothing that says like coming from Auto Electric up to East Grand that you remove that right turn only, that people don't use it as a two-lane. Just like they do going westbound, like you mentioned.
Well, and that's kind of it's an awkward section of road, or an awkward series of roads right there, because they're too wide to be justifiable as a single lane road. And they're too narrow to really feel safe as a 2-lane road, or, you know, as a,
Yeah.
whatever it is, 4-lane road, but, and I'm assuming like when we do the project plan, when it comes down, you'll have probably just like on the other side of the river, I wasn't a super huge fan of them then, but whatever, the bump outs. So I mean, all these sections will have bump outs in them, which will take up some of that space, which will actually be a good thing in that case, but, that's not now, but,
The boulevards will be much wider too. Be much, you know, the sidewalks and then the grass terrace will be much wider in this
okay.
stretch.
Since you kind of brought up the, down there at Second, with the removal of the turn lane, and that would be something that, if we try to go all the way down to the river right there and include that in the 2019 plan, is that something that we have to do right now in order to show that, like as a stipulation?
No, it's certainly not. It was just something I threw out there as, you know, it's kind of one of those, it's likely gonna have to change eventually.
'Cause I mean, we already changed it coming off the bridge to this style structure.
Right. And this would, the center lines would actually line up across from each other better. Right now, the through traffic is tucked up next to
Mhm.
Wood Trust Bank, and they cut across the bike lanes.
Yep.
You know, right before the bridge.
Yep.
Because all that paint's wearing off, because the vehicles are pushed over that far.
Don't you see a bottleneck coming for westbound traffic at that intersection, especially in the evening when people are trying to turn left for the movie theater? There's a church down here too, and, you know, too. I don't see the need for this until your reconstruction on the left turn lane onto Second. Because I think you're gonna create a bottleneck, people are coming down that hill, and then if you got cars sitting there at a green light with their left turn signal on, because they can't turn left,
Well, it's a 4-way
It's a
stop.
4-way stop, though we don't have the lights, that's
Oh,
why
that's
it'd be
true.
every other one.
that's true now,
So
yeah,
it'd be-
okay. That's true now.
Yeah, like I say, I don't know the history, and it seems to me guessing that it surfaced when those lights were removed. And I've driven that, we all have, and I don't sense that problem. And I would recommend that we put in the signage that might be missing. I think there's 2 or 3 signs. But to wait 3 or 4 years, and if there hasn't been an accident or pedestrian issues surfacing, and maybe we could talk to the police department or what have you, but I haven't heard of any
You know, and I think there's some good
ideas.
elements in it. To me, the really the key that's missing in here is the stretch right in front of the post office. Because, and I think probably where you get that question of, is this a single lane, is this, you know, whatever this is, I think that probably stems out of westbound, it's only 1 lane, but eastbound it's 2 lanes. So everybody thinks that westbound, you can jump out and catch right or go straight, but,
But if you're going east,
you know, if you're going, yeah, it's,
and the person pulling out of the parking area in front of the post office is stopped. Right, you know, you see them pulling out.
right,
And you're not you're accelerating from the stop sign, going east. And so you're not going at a high rate of speed.
right.
You should be able to see someone pulling out or trying to get in.
Call me crazy, I'd rather just see it in the parking lot.
Sound like
I say that under my breath, because I know that was
Yeah,
just
so-
horrible. But, no, I mean, and that would be a radical thing to do, you know, change it for just down to a 1 lane and make that other lane angle parking and, you know, in front of there. But to me, that would seem like, I don't know, it just feels like this is, it feels like everything that's from Second up Grand is, you know, well thought out, and that makes a lot of sense. And coming off of Third, you know, on the south side of Grand on Third, that makes a lot of sense. But it just seems like once we hit in front of the post office, I don't know, I'm not, for some reason, I'm not seeing it, I'm not feeling it there, and it's just, the big part that's missing for me is on the westbound lane, because there's no, aside from that worn off painted area where we tried to control it
Yeah, there
in the
was,
past, you know, and I fear that's what's gonna happen again is, you know, people's, without actually having some sort of a physical barrier preventing people from traveling over this one section, you're gonna wear that paint right off of there within 2 seasons anyway, so it, and we haven't kept up on the paint to force that bump towards the center line going west. You know, so I hesitate, because I see the same thing happening if we paint in a section going east,
Mhm.
the same thing will happen, unless we provide a physical barrier.
But, and I think, you know, again, I think the main, referral here is just, was to get rid of the turn, you know, the additional lanes, the turn lanes. Just like single lane approaches to the intersections. The one right turn only was primarily proposed that way due to the fact that the pavement width there is so wide that, you know, there's, you can't really reduce it down to a
Right.
single lane, so. But,
I guess as far as I'm concerned, I'm fine with what's proposed, but I don't really think that anything here is necessary right now. Because I just think that's gonna add to a level of, you know, confusion, frustration, and basically, people are gonna ignore it.
It's not natural to take off from
Exactly.
make a right turn and go out into the center lane.
Right.
away. That's
You
not
try and teach
natural.
everybody not to do that, first
Right.
off, you know, in driver's ed, you know,
That's true.
don't cut across all the lanes of traffic to get
Exactly.
there, and now here we're trying to push it there.
Right.
I'd be in favor of everything but doing anything right there. And maybe that'll help to kind of show a traffic pattern as we go into the planning stages for the 2019 project. Start to kind of show if there's deficiencies. Right, if this was a good move, if this was a bad move, if we need to go back to some other style, if we need to go back to the drawing board, or if this works really well, that this is a good traffic flow pattern for that area.
So are you saying to do this part here, to do?
Yeah, I'm saying to do this section here and this removal, you know, that right there,
Well,
but
you're
leave
saying
this,
it's not the
leave
post
that
office.
alone, yeah, leave it alone in front of the post office, because it's not natural, it's gonna create havoc.
And that's what the changes then? Down here.
Yeah. Because I mean, you're naturally gonna, everybody who's going straight, going fully eastbound, they're naturally gonna be in the inside lane. And the people who are coming off of Third going eastbound on Grand, they're still naturally gonna wanna hug the inside, turn into the inside lane.
Yeah, so there you're actually creating a problem area or a merging of traffic if you're
Yes.
making that inside lane a straight through lane and then creating a right turn to the
Inside lane.
inside lane.
Right.
Maybe
You're
pushing
actually-
right in there.
Right, now you're causing people to cross into the same lane of travel.
Right, where before they
Which
could
they've
have
never-
their own lane, yeah.
Not to say it wouldn't work, but they've never done it before, and it's, I don't know, it's, without actually reconstructing the street into a design that's laid out for that purpose, I think it's, and I don't know what the overall plan's gonna be, if it's gonna be just 2 lanes through that whole stretch, or 4 lanes, or 3 lanes, or what.
yeah, I think the intent is, that they would, narrow it up, narrow the roadway up, provide, parallel parking, single lanes, and then the bike lanes as well. A wide terrace, and of course, once you get up by, Lincoln Street, then from there to A Street, it is so terraces will shrink back down
Right.
that section. But-
Which is probably a lot more appropriate for that stretch of road as it is now versus 50 years ago.
Yep.
Well, do you wanna make a motion to what you were saying
Sure,
there?
I'll fumble one through. Motion to approve design changes for the stretch of East Grand Avenue from Second to Third. Let me know when you're caught up. And to approve the design changes of Third south of the Grand and Third intersection. With all appropriate signage as maybe required now or after remarking.
To include the north leg of Third Street as well.
He's got a right turn.
Oh, you kinda,
Yeah,
I didn't see,
graded it.
kinda bled into the same color as the road. Yes, and
Okay.
Also changes for Third from Third and Grand north. Give you a little more room to put snow too. I think we've had that problem this year.
I'll second that. Move it along. Any further discussion? I know.
Well, the only way I would vote for it, if you're gonna do the paint, anyway, this is getting faded, you got 4 years out.
Mhm.
You know, so if you're gonna do that, you might as well do it with the changes in mind. So, otherwise, I don't see a problem, you know, in a sense, it's not broken. And how to surface and things like that, but if they're gonna do the painting of the lines, let's say 2 years from now, and you still, it's silly not to do this now. So I guess I would have to go along with it because of that. But otherwise, I don't think I would go. So, do you think it would need to be painted within the next couple of years anyway?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if they did it, I'm not sure if they did it last year or not, so they did every couple of years.
No.
Even the bike lane did it just last fall or.
Where,
Yeah.
That's where, yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, committee will vote. All those in favor of the motion respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 3, review and discuss the city's existing street lighting policy.
Okay,
So I guess
yep,
we've had this on the agenda for a while.
yeah.
We'll see where we go.
So hopefully, I was able, I pulled together a whole new policy, kind of try to incorporate some of the items that, where it was left off and, pulled out existing policies that we had that pertain to it. We brought it before the committee previously and there was some discussion on it. Kind of the two main parts, one being the actual policy and the other one being kind of the standard specifications for our street lighting. And so Water and Light had gone through and put together the standard specs. And so those are referenced in this policy document that you have in front of you. The two policies that I found that were existing that discuss the street lighting are also attached. Primarily what they specified, 150 watt street light on a wood pole, and these are primarily for residential areas in that 1 per block, or about plus or minus 300 feet. So with the new policy, what I've got kind of proposed there is, rather than there's the pole standards and the light fixture standards, being LED, and then based upon the area of town, if it's a wood pole or not, that the placement of those will be based upon the design standards that are referenced in here. And so between water and light and city engineering staff to determine, based on the request, what makes the most sense with the system and what the needs are. And that any of those residential requests, if not approved in the budget, would come back for the committee and council for specific approval.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
On the first one, under pole standards, well, we don't have A Street. Now, I know in the future we're planning, whenever that happens, we do A Street. Will that be the fourth dot where there'd be white fiberglass poles
I believe so.
and aluminum? Okay. I just wondered about that. And then the word under the street lighting design standards, I kind of like to suggest the first sentence become the second sentence. And say the following manuals will be consulted. It just, you have the idea of the manuals first, and then you have a statement, and
Sure.
then you have the manuals listed. So if you put that first sentence second and say the following manuals. And then one question that came up last year was street lighting be used as security, purposes.
Sure.
And you have it in your last one, in the third policy. You have it in the second sentence, lighting that is intended for security or private property is the responsibility of the property owner. I like to also include that in the first policy, so it's in both places, because that was one of the issues we had.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And that's not in the first one. And then, okay, that, basically, I think that was it for my first one. The second one, you talked about the policy. In the first one, you said the future lights are gonna be LED. And then on the second policy here, you have the sodium fixture mounted. So if the future ones are gonna be LED, why would we have sodium?
I should clarify a little bit. These two are I was planning on putting on, these two are the existing ones that we have.
So we're not gonna use these?
This first one would kind of overwrite those.
Oh, okay.
Kind
All
of update it.
So
that-
these will be discontinued then?
Yeah, primarily, the parts that, obviously, this first one, policy for ornamental streetlights, I think it's primarily all in the first one. And then, like the comment that you mentioned for security in the second one. But then the rest of this we'll keep in this policy for traffic control devices.
Okay, so then, okay, so.
So it's short.
I'm kind of slow. So this policy will not be in existence, the second one right here.
Right.
So we can take that out.
Yep.
And now we have this one with regard to control. Now, this, I'm not educated in this chart where it says volume per hour for 6 hours and volume per 24 hours. And what does all this mean? Or should you just refer to that as part of your manual?
Yeah, that's primarily what we use it for, it's there are more warrants, kind of thresholds that we use to, if somebody wants a stop sign or four-way stop, traffic signal, we can, based upon these sorts of, this matrix, take a look and see what, does it meet the warrants? Is it something that we would normally do? And if not, then, what's the appropriate traffic control for that issue? So this, really everything below the first paragraph here is really the installation of streetlights. Is really probably the only thing that is worthy of discussion for policy, the new policy for streetlights. The rest are regulatory signs and speed limit signs. I think we would just modify this and scratch out that first paragraph.
Scratch this paragraph out?
Yeah, we primarily keep this policy because of the other things in there. I think there's additional pages that go along with this whole policy, but
I would like to suggest that maybe make the changes we talked about, and if you had other changes, but then come back and look at this.
Come back, man.
Because it's gonna carry with us a long time.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's, I just put on there review and discuss, so,
Yeah.
just primarily to talk about.
Well,
it
if-
and see what-
If this is gonna be the new policy, but then we're still kind of hanging on to some of the old documents, I'd rather just see us, get them all into one, rather than making an addendum or a policy two, or, whatever it is. Just, pull everything and condense it right into one document, so, it's like, well, this is the policy, but well, I mean, we have to adhere to this, and we should probably consult this one. No, just make it all.
Yeah.
There you go.
And put bold under that one policy, put this, just so it's like one document.
Right, because I mean, I think there's still stuff in that last one that's not addressed in the new draft that is important. But, I don't know which one you're gonna end up keeping in the end and
So,
modifying.
so for the last one, the
Mhm.
specifics,
Well, you have in here, under the procedures, the installation of streetlights, that whole paragraph there is not referenced whatsoever in the draft document.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, for me, bringing the subject forward to the committee, that was probably the most contentious part of the conversation, the thing that I kind of was the essence of the conversation I was trying to get at the most there, was, lighting for, I still don't really consider streetlights security for private residents. I still don't personally consider it that. I get that that's what the police department classifies it, the engineering department classifies it, but,
Yeah. It's not.
it's not, because I mean,
Safety.
it's for safety, it is for security, but it's for the security of the road, it's for the security of the right of way, for the security of the sidewalk, so if I put up, a flood lamp on my house, motion activated flood lamp on my house, it's gonna activate, well, depending upon how I decide to set it up, but it's gonna activate if somebody approaches my door.
Right.
It's not gonna activate if somebody walks down the sidewalk that's 5, 10, 20 feet away from my house. So I still have a fundamentally different view of what street lighting is in regards to safety and security. For me, they still kind of go hand in hand, because right-of-way safety, security, private property safety, security. So I still don't really feel like that necessarily addresses that lingering question that I have, this paragraph here. But at the same time, it's all that we have to reference that question. It's not referenced in that new draft document.
so primarily the security portion, that's primarily. the-
Yeah, I mean, I still,
Language on the intent and.
right, and I still, this is gonna be one of those sticking points of reading the intent in it, but if you've got a neighborhood that has higher levels of criminal activity or whatever the case is there, right, so dealing drugs, nuisances, loud parties, things of that nature, you pick whatever you want. A street that is unlighted is going to be more prone to having those things happen, in my mind. I'm not a policy expert by any stretch of the imagination, I don't have the documents to prove that, but I think that's probably the perception that myself and a lot of other people would typically share. An unlighted section of street's gonna be more prone to certain undesired activities than a street that's lighted. So if you have, I know in my experience, when the guys living next door were the ones that were sheltering the guy who robbed Taco John's, and that street light was out, that was directly across the street from our house there was, a lot more concern in the neighborhood about what was going on at that house. And there was a lot of concern that it just, you felt like more was going on there than what probably really was. But when the light was replaced, the whole neighborhood had a safer feel to it. You know, and so it's not necessarily, you know, where you can connect that activity to that one thing. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Well, I
Well,
think,
it's that there's this general impression.
Yeah, there's
Feeling
the
that-
perception, there's the impression, and I get that the police department's probably not gonna get on board, they're gonna say that's a private property issue. If that's the way that you feel about the need to put up flood lamps, I get that. But one, a lot of people aren't gonna put the money up for that, they're not gonna have the money to spend for that. And if you wanna go for a walk towards dusk, you know, people get done with dinner, they wanna go for a walk, whatever the case is like that. They're gonna feel safer walking down a street that's more well-lit than a street that's not well-lit. Well, the sidewalk, that's technically public right-of-way. So it should be in the city's best interest to light those areas as much as possible, within reason. Than to say that, well, that's on the private property side of things, when it, to me, it's not, because that's public right-of-way.
I think here they're talking more about business property, you know, like,
Right.
and,
And maybe that distinction needs to be made. I mean, since when was this policy originally written? You know, maybe times have changed since then, and that distinction needs to be more clearly defined. You know, for residential zones versus commercial districts versus industrial districts, however you wanna call it.
so do you feel comfortable with the suggestions that?
I think primarily, you know, this one paragraph, and really the first two sentences, and I can certainly elaborate on the security issue, but
Mhm.
really the first two sentences are the only thing in that paragraph that, I think are addressed in some form or fashion. The streetlight, one per block, you know, we're gonna follow the design standards unless, you know, unless there's some other discussion on that.
I mean, it kind of begs,
Residential streets.
you already referenced one per block, so I mean, that kind of begs the question, is this on all city side roads? Is this only on arterials or collectors? What's the standard for receiving that one per block? Because I mean, I could probably walk down half the streets in my district and they're not necessarily lit on some of the side roads.
And what's a block? Here they talked about 300 feet.
Right.
I think it's mostly at intersections,
Right.
you know.
The street that I live on is longer only because we don't have, like if you map down on the thing, there's a block over, there's a street that would bisect it if it went all the way through. So my street's twice as long, so right in the middle of the section of the block that I live on, there's a street light right there. And maybe that's, by design, that's where it's supposed to be because that would be a normal sized block. I don't know.
Maybe there's a pole there.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, are we gonna, if we say one per block, are we gonna have to go out and put in 10, 20, 200 more poles because we said one per block versus having a distance? I don't know. But, and I'm not opposed or in favor of it either way, but I think it's something that we should know going into when we make the policy, that if we make the policy like this, we're covered. If we make the policy like this, we know that we need to do this many more.
Yeah, you don't wanna set it up so it's Pandora's box, all of a sudden you got people.
Right.
More
There's-
lighting than.
Right, and because there's, you know, areas of the city streets that don't have any houses on at all, or you go over by, Spring Street where there's even a city park there, and there's not many houses on the east and the south side of it, you know, all the residences are more north than west of that, so why are we lighting up vacant land, you know?
Right.
Right. There should be some kind of a standard of, you know, burden of proof or requirement for a light and.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think what the, kind of the intent when I was putting this together was hoping that, you know, with the design standards, that when when an area gets looked at, or when a street gets redone, that, you know, that entire system kind of gets, you know, that it gets looked at time to see.
Looked
you
at
know,
and
so it's
decided
not-
at that point in time
Okay,
right.
how,
I mean, you may never,
what to put.
Not to go,
Where.
not to go back and look back at what is
Right.
existing now and what we should change, but if we change this in the future, then it has to come up to this standard.
Right.
so I mean, you may never get rid of the isolated instances where, hey, there's an issue here, need a light, okay, bring it to the committee, see what the committee thinks,
Mhm.
you know, and then go and take care of it. But at least that, you know, the other way, well, it says, the policy says we gotta provide one per block, you know.
And I think
And
that if
that's-
that's the intention of how you're written, I think that's probably really important to communicate in that policy as well, that from this date going forward.
Yeah, like
You
a
know.
grandfather clause.
Right, I think you should have that in there, that way you don't all of a sudden, you know, you get swamped with 20 phone calls in the first week, where's my light pole, you know? So otherwise you could be running ragged, and then the way it's written could be interpreted in such a way that, yeah, we have to put it in.
So you say future lighting.
Right, or future redesign and construction must adhere to this standard.
Right.
Existing is grandfathered in as it currently exists.
So that part where, like, these manuals will be consulted when adding, modifying, replacing, or installing new lighting fixtures.
And you
Yeah.
existing, you could put that in there. Existing lighting will, be maintained, but, new lighting will be based on these manuals.
Right. To the point that Todd was getting to, I think there should be some type of a burden of proof that a light is necessary
Right.
in a given area for whatever the, you know, so maybe we have to come up with a burden of proof of, you know, yeah, there's a block here, but there's no houses on it, so we don't need to light it. But there's a light, so we should take it out. Or there's a block here, but, and there's only one house, but there's a city park, so we should light that. I don't know what that is gonna necessarily come down to, but I think that should be a part of that policy as well. Try and be all encompassing if we, you know, as much as we possibly can be, and just have that in one go-to,
You need some judgment call.
right, just go to one go-to guide, you know.
And I've reviewed the Astro Roadway Lighting Design Guide. I haven't looked at the IES guide yet to see how in-depth that one is, but talking with Todd Weiler, it sounded like he was aware of that publication and some knowledge behind it.
Is that what those publications address, is things like that?
Primarily,
Okay.
it's their guidelines on how to design and manage and install, replace, you know, the whole best practices sort of thing.
Okay, so when I'm saying there should be a burden of proof, that's contained
Yeah,
within those,
they
okay.
should be in there. The Astro one, it does have a lot of the security sort of discussion in there, as well as, I mean, they even talked about curfews and different things where some areas of town actually, the lights either dim at a certain time of night because, you know, it's quiet going on.
Right,
Or else they just, some areas just shut off completely at a certain time. Then, you know, that frees up operating money
Sure.
to provide additional lighting when it's actually needed or whatever it might be, so,
I'd have to have some kind of a smart grid behind it then.
yeah, I would imagine.
I had no idea any of that was contained within those, so I think maybe that addresses a lot of these questions that we've got too, so. Do we currently adhere to those standards or reference those materials now?
The Astro one, we would on occasion, although we don't do a lot of designing of the lighting. I mean, the most recent ones we've done, like the state did First Street along with Water and Light, you know, in conjunction with that project. And then Oak Street last summer, and Water and Light assisted us with that. So they are using what they use to lay out where we do have active street lighting, where it isn't just a residential area.
Mhm.
That they lay out the whatever fixture and pole height, and then they do the spacing so that you get the right, illumination on the pavement.
Sure.
On the spread and
Yep.
everything like that, so it's all laid out so you get the proper lighting on that
Hmm.
street. If we rebuild a residential street, like say 10th Street, that we did last summer, if we don't actively at this time look to see if we've got a pole at every intersection, it's a primarily residential area, but that could be something that gets looked at. I mean, it could be whenever we do a project that, hey, this should be looked at.
I think it should be part of construction
Yeah,
projects.
I mean, where I live, every intersection, it's, middle of the block, you don't have any lighting per se, but every intersection where you have cross traffic or pedestrian crossing that, there is lighting.
How much, Joe, I guess, water and light is involved? Are they really, would they be the main players, I guess, versus down here at City Hall, engineering and that? Or is it hand in hand, or?
It's kind of both. Kind of depends on the situation. I mean, primarily, they have the staff that maintains them, installs them, they purchase them. It'd be our city funding, I think, for primarily, they would be the ones making the purchase. And recently, I think Dave in the past had done some of the street lighting or talked to the vendors himself, because they'll oftentimes just do the layout, make sure you get the proper illumination of the pavement. And I'm not sure if Todd's doing the same thing, if he's going to the vendor, because every fixture, every pole height, it changes, the application, the street width and everything that, every application's different, so.
Your concern is having two different standards within the city, from what it sounds like,
Yeah, I'm trying to get.
we're doing one
trying to
thing and
get there, I
Waterworks
guess,
and Light's doing something else.
To me, it just seems like what do we want to light?
Mhm.
Do we want that there's a continuous light down the street, or, not as bright here as there, but that it's lit from one end of
Right.
the block to the other end of the block?
20 lumens here versus 10
And
lumens
you're
here.
gonna, where I live, it's a long block too, but
Yeah.
there's lights in between the corners.
So when I
It's just something what do we want? How lit do we want it?
Right, and who was it that said last
Yeah.
time, not everybody's gonna want a light,
Yeah.
based in that area.
But that, to me, they don't have a call on that, in a sense, if we
Right.
have a standard and we want it every 300 feet, whatever that is,
Right,
and it's in front of your house, I appreciate their concern, but I'm saying,
right, no,
because
that's,
you live there now, you may not live there, later on,
Or
5
you-
years from now.
or you may live there and you may dislike it, but the 4 people that live right around you think it's
Yeah,
excellent.
so it's complex, but,
Yeah.
but I know, just in my experience as a principal, one teacher would like to have their room like this. Well, who says that teachers, and with things that are permanent, and who says that teacher's gonna be there 5 years, they might be moved to a different grade. But that room has to be a standard room, so they're all standard, and, it's the same concept, I think,
Right.
too. That you just have to have some standard, and then, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
And Todd has seen this draft policy, I ran it past him, before bringing it to the committee, but he was in favor of, listing the publications in there and using those as the guidance, so that when you get down to the procedures, when the request comes in, that an internal review between engineering and water and light, would be done in accordance with the policy, so that, those guidance manuals would be reviewed, looked at. You go out to the site, you see what's going on, or, is it all residential, is it, maybe there's no houses, what, commercial area, whatever it is, maybe it's a private issue, and go from there.
To get proper implementation, would Water and Light have to adopt the same policy and work off of that, or? Because you're talking about them going to vendors and they're the ones that are buying and procuring and installing and maintaining
I think it's primarily at our
level.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we
they just
set the
install.
standard, we make it how we want it, and then Water and Light does it how we want it.
Primarily.
We're the customer, they're the contractor.
Well, should we have I guess, bring that back next month,
Yeah.
with, other
Yeah.
suggestions put in, and I guess if we have any between now and then, to let Joe know.
Email you.
I think it's worthy enough to spend a lot of time on.
Yeah, because I mean,
It's,
this,
it's a costly deal.
it's
Oh, yeah.
costly, and this could last us quite a long time, whatever
Yeah.
document we come up with.
This has been here on the agenda for quite a while,
Yeah.
so, it's
Do it right.
Finally get it into it, yeah, do it right.
Yeah.
Thanks for all your help on
Sure.
writing it.
Okay, you caught up, Joe, or?
Yep.
I'll give you a minute here if you need it. All right, item 4, and that's to review and approve the DOT project 6999-07-19, the negotiated three-party design contract for the East Grand Avenue, 3rd Street to 8th Street project.
Okay, so similar to the contract that I brought last month, this is for East Grand from Third to Eighth. It's negotiated up to this point. There's the dollar amount is $357,425.20 for the design contract. The city's responsible for 20% of that, whereas the state and federal monies pick up the remaining 80%. Both the DOT and the DOT's management consultant are in agreement with that value at this point. It's underneath the original state municipal agreement amount of $418,000. So with that information, as staff would recommend approving that design contract as written. However, there was discussion just this week on making a modification to the project length to go from the bridge to 8th Street. The reason it remained 3rd Street to 8th Street was the original application that when we applied for the money, it was 3rd to 8th. And so that's remained up to this point. There was discussions early on to get that changed right away, and it sounded like at that point that the contract needed to be in place, and there would just be an amendment to that at that time. Right now, they're thinking, well, maybe they're checking on it to see, should we do an amendment, or should we just negotiate that and include it in the contract right up front? So with that, I would say that we could probably still, if they choose to do the amendment, that we would bring the amendment back for approval. And if they, I guess, if staff or the committee recommends approving the contract as it is, that if the DOT decides that it's best to modify the original, not modify, but just redo it, that we'd be bringing that back anyway as well. So I guess either way, we're kind of bringing it back. The difference would be that if we amend it, we've got the original approved.
But you want to get it in place right now.
Yeah, ideally, I guess I was going back and forth on really what our recommendation would be, and not the easiest one, I guess, to
And this-
recommend, but
This was originally negotiated in 2012.
no, like this last month.
Okay. I just saw date November 19th, 2012 on the bottom, so I wasn't sure if it was,
Oh,
if the document was really that old or.
no, it must just be a typo. Just a footnote, if it's updated, I'm not sure.
Well, it definitely is the right way from the bridge to do the whole thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
As far as that goes,
Absolutely.
just how we get to
Well, and we
tie
wanted
that
to,
last piece in.
we wanted to incorporate what we did on the west side with what we were gonna do on the east side. Now put a hole right in the middle of them.
What do you think is best, I guess, which route to go, Joe?
Well, I guess in case they decide to do an amendment, that
Or is
might
it
be
just to
best
hold on to it for a while?
Well, I think, probably the best thing, if the DOT decides to do an amendment, then that would, you know, this contract can be executed as is, because they'll, you know, have the base contract, and they'll do an amendment on top of that. And then if they decide that, well, and I'm assuming they're gonna decide within the next 2 weeks on what they're gonna do. That if they negotiate a new contract altogether, that we'll just bring it back. We'll bring it back to the committee for reapproval, approval of the new terms.
Even if it got an amendment, that amendment would still have to come back anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the
Should we-
downside of not doing anything now would be that if they say, let's do an amendment.
We don't have anything
we
in
don't have
place for
anything
another
to
month.
amend. Yeah.
I'd
Well, then go
almost
ahead
say,
and-
make a motion to
Yeah.
approve the contract, as shown pursuant to DOT decision to either amend the current contract or renegotiate a new contract with either revision coming back to Public Works. If that makes any sense.
It does with a lot of words there.
Yeah, so
Either way, it's gonna come back to the
Right.
committee, as I understand it.
approve the current contract as presented. And with the understanding that the DOT will be making some kind of decision here.
They ask for it.
Yeah, if the DOT asks for the amendment to the current contract, the amendment to come back to Public Works. Or if the DOT requests an all-new contract for that document to come back to Public Works.
That last part you might not even need. Because, if you're approving the contract unless you need an amendment. Well, if they say, yeah, we'll need an amendment, then it will come back.
Do we really need any more than just approving the contract?
No,
And then what happens, I mean, if an amendment comes about or
New
to
contract.
a new contract, either way,
The DOT won't execute their end of it if they wanna
Until the city
write
is
a new
stamped.
contract. So, I guess, and we're certainly gonna hold off on, like, I'm not gonna give it to, wouldn't come till after council anyway, that we here to sign the contract, so. We should know by then, skip the vote.
Well, should we wait a month then? Is there any fallout if we wait a month? I mean, is there a date that's magical, and if you put it off 1 month, this goes away, or we get?
Not sure on the schedule.
I would think the only thing that we'd have against us is that if the DOT would amend the current contract, we wouldn't have the current contract in place.
They wouldn't have a contract in place to amend.
Right,
Yeah, that's.
so
Unless we hold a quick meeting before council of the decision.
scratch what I just, motion to approve the current contract.
Yeah.
Cause if the DOT wants a new contract,
Tell us.
they'll scrap it on their
yeah, I
end,
think
we won't be able to do anything
those things are
anyway.
gonna happen.
Yep, we won't be able to do anything anyway with the current contract, so we'd have to make a new one. And if they amend it, it comes back, just
Right.
approve the document as presented.
And if whatever funding they have, they might say, we can't, I mean, so now we'll have it from third day, I mean,
Right, all the levels are gonna change anyway.
right.
I'll second the motion. You Got that, Joe?
Yep,
All right.
long way to get there.
Yeah, well, sometimes it takes that.
Short agenda you thought it was gonna be.
Screw that up for you.
Any other questions or anything on that item? Hearing none, committee will post, all those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Number 5, and that's to review the proposed 2015 Public Works project schedule.
It is an updated schedule. The most notable changes on there, starting from the top down, I guess, 17th Avenue North. Originally, or previously, we had it separated, where we were gonna do the remaining work in fall. But discussions with the street department and conditions that are already currently out there, it's likely gonna be best to get it squared away for spring and spring. Even with some of the snow melting now, it's turning into quite a mess out there, but. The Safe Routes to School project, we've removed all the trees, that needed to be removed from the right of way. And, we'll be holding a pre-construction meeting. All the contract documents are signed and ready to go. And then end of March, we'll be holding a pre-construction meeting, getting the contractor's schedule and timeline and everything for their course of action for starting up in the spring to do the sidewalk work for that project. I think those are really the only two changes there.
Have you started cutting the tree?
Yep, we did that. Started the 9th. Took about 2 weeks to finish it all.
I was just looking here, it looks like the Chestnut and 8th down to 16th. And I was just kind of curious about the 8th and Chestnut intersection modification, but it looks like that'll take place after that. 8th to 16th on Chestnut completes.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be right on the tails of that project. So.
That sure is needed. That's a dangerous.
Okay, anything else, committee, or? Anybody? Joe, Todd? Okay. Item 6, that's to review our referral list. And number 5 of 2015.
And were the two of you involved on that email list that was going back and forth between myself and, was it Joe and Jim and the mayor on the waterfowl, the goose population?
I hadn't paid attention.
No,
Was I?
it- I guess they want to have a discussion with, is it the Clean Green Welcoming Committee or not them, but maybe like,
City.
yeah, it might be representatives from Bird City and discuss what's been going on there.
Joe did tell me about it.
Yeah.
Mentioned that, yeah.
And I wasn't aware, but I guess we have been doing some control measures. We have been doing oiling for the last 3 years as well, so I wasn't aware of that. But we just haven't done a roundup.
Was there some discussion too on the Council for Beautification? I don't know the name of the park, but the one right across from Riverview.
Dennis.
And they're talking about geese come up in that area.
Mhm.
So they've talked about the idea that you can get grass, as long as the grass like 6 inches, 12 inches
Yeah.
high. But then they put like a fish line through.
Sure.
So
Prevent them coming
the
through.
geese would come up and hit the fish line and just, go back.
Yeah.
They wouldn't go through. So they're talking to Jim Borski as kind of like a pilot, something like this would be feasible. And that would be an area that they could try it and see where you do have geese, but you don't get a lot of population in that area, people and so forth, that you could see if it's making a difference.
Right.
So, and it's viable to try it there.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's,
not as heavily used as the other parks.
no, they're exploring that, so. I mean, I think it's multi-pronged,
Mhm.
you know, it's a collection of the geese, if it's the eggs,
Well,
or if it's.
and the one thing I don't have in here, maybe would be part of a waterfowl policy of some sort, but the feeding. I've literally watched people take bags of popcorn from the movie theater and dump them on the sidewalk to feed the geese, feed the ducks. You know, and I know Jim said that was a problem too, you know, you figure, oh, okay, you know, grandma and the kids are gonna go down and pitch a couple pieces of moldy bread at the kid. Yeah, that's fine, but then all of a sudden you suddenly realize that 10 minutes before they got there, somebody just left with a bag of bread, and 20 minutes after grandma and the kids are there, there's another person with bread, so it's a constant ongoing.
It's hard to fight that though, to give
It
a
is.
warning ticket.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
It
It's,
is.
it's motherhood apple pie type of thing where you
Yeah.
take your grandkids on.
Yeah,
So, I don't know, to me, I think the gathering of the geese or some type of vegetation in certain areas.
probably the best way to go with it.
Otherwise, that's like fighting City Hall on that one, you know what I mean?
Ironic.
Yeah,
I just thought I'd share with you the conversations that I had there. So.
But just a quick update too on number 7.
Yeah.
I did talk with Mr. Becky, and his concern right now is partially due with the water conservation or lack of the water that's being flushed out of there. And so he's looking for information that Water and Light had gotten done for modeling, putting that loop in. They had it looked at, and if we put that loop in on Grove, it's actually gonna make the water quality even worse at his location, and which is kind of counterintuitive, but it's just gonna kind of shuffle back and forth like this, and it's not gonna allow any new water to come into the
Sure.
area. And so Dale Schumann from Water and Light, he's gonna be in contact with the property owner and get him the information that he needs, and I guess we'll see where it goes from there, but.
So he just lives like, what, at the end of a service line or something?
Yeah, there's a 12-inch line that runs down 21st Place, and it dead ends there.
Oh,
And it's already kind of on the outskirts of town.
yeah, I think I remember
and
hearing
it
about
dead ends,
this
so-
a few years back.
So the water, when it dead ends like that, and he's a limited user,
Mhm.
then the water quality suffers.
A little bit. I can't say that all dead end areas would do that. But his location where he's at, it does, the water quality does suffer there. Not dangerous, but it's not as pleasant either, I guess, so.
what about number 20? Does that affect, I mean, the Y having an addition onto the Riverview?
That one,
Hill going through?
it came up maybe 3 months ago. And it was part of taking a look at all of their property on the south side along the expressway. And with some future, I don't know if it played into what was going on possibly with the Y or not, but I haven't heard anything since.
So we'll probably sit on this until they get their plans together.
Yeah, and it might just disappear. I don't know what, you know.
Is it something you could contact them and ask them if they're still interested in having that on there? And
Yeah, I
maybe
did
next month
talk.
we could strike it if
Let's see.
necessary.
Can't
Or warn
remember the
Or encourage them, I mean, that we're part of this addition, you know, encourage putting that.
Whatever plan they had in
Yeah,
place for it, yeah.
I did talk with Lampert Lee, because they had, at that meeting where this referral came from, that engineer and Riverview Hospital staff were present, and they were going through the items, and I did talk with him since it got on the list here. He had said that it's on hold, and it may not happen, but I guess we can leave it on there or put it back on too. Either way.
Leave it on for now, I guess.
Yeah, I guess if you want to, we can leave it, I guess, if it sits there.
We don't have a statute
I mean,
of
down the
limitations.
road, 6 months or whatever
Right.
from now, if it's still there, you know, take it off, and I guess if they
Right.
wanna come back, they come back.
We've left stuff sit there longer than that.
Oh, yeah.
The lighting.
So
Oh,
number
no,
7 there to leave
Something
on
like
though, Joe,
2004.
on 21st place, or is that gonna get resolved?
It sounds like it's gonna get resolved. He was primarily looking for the information, you know, the documents and stuff as to why, you know, so he was kind of bouncing off to the last referral that he had, and then, you know, he's got additional concerns with the water conservation now, with flushing the water out. So it sounds like Dale's gonna get him the information he needs and work with him on, you know, how much water is being flushed and how often, and so he's got a good understanding of the water conservation side of it too, so.
So we probably could take it off,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah,
Take it off too.
yeah. So 7 and 8.
What's the number 13 there?
I was gonna ask. Because I've seen that for
Yeah.
quite a while.
It's been there.
What's the deal?
Number
13?
13, under 2000.
13, 2014, number 13.
I mean, I think I know what the issue was, if I remember right. Had to do with the erection of a fence.
Yeah,
That cut off somebody's access to a
yeah,
ingress in a parking lot, and
I think it's a result, or this referral resulted from two property owners disputing on parking lot access or not, and like you just mentioned the fence, and we haven't heard anything since that. It was probably mid-2015.
yeah, I'd almost be in favor of taking that one off myself, because if that's the case, then that's not a city issue, that's a two private citizen issue, or whatever the case is. And then if they have to cut curb, then they need to come to the city and ask permission to
Let
cut
it
curb.
resurface it.
Well, I think in that area though, there isn't a curb, is there? On some parts of this?
Some
No,
parts there's
no.
not. I think it's a little bit further, is it west? Right there? Cause he's right at the end
Okay.
of that little
Alien stuff.
cul-de-sac.
Right.
And I think there is curb at the cul-de-sac, but I think a little bit further west of that, up until you hit, is that Daly? No. What's
Seventh and
Seventh, yeah,
Seventh
until you hit
Street.
Seventh, I think part of that is non-curb.
And I think what he was looking for is what remedies he could get in the right of way, you know, at little or no cost. You know, so you wouldn't have to work things out with the property owner.
But he hasn't approached the city to
Not-
request that at all.
No, not since.
Not since he put this in?
Yeah.
It's been there a while.
I would recommend taking it off.
If he has any questions, you can go back to your office, or,
Yeah.
you know, make it known that he still wants to discuss it.
Yeah, will he be notified that it's taken off then, or,
Yeah, I can.
I mean, otherwise he wouldn't know, I guess.
Right.
But maybe it's been forgotten and
Right.
whatever too, so.
I'll double check too and make sure that. see if I
Well, why
can-
don't we take that off for now
Date
and
notified him.
13 there, 2014.
Clean that up.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4 left.
That's good.
Joe, just, and then it's not on there, but, where, I guess, at some point in time, and I think I mentioned this, we, well, it even came up in our discussion about that Scott 8th Street, I forget how you mentioned it, why it came up tonight. But at some point in time, this committee, whoever, is gonna have to address the issue of 8th Street, of what can be done, or when, you know, what has to be done.
Yeah.
There even was an accident yesterday, pretty serious one. From looking at the cars.
What, I guess, what What is it that you're
Oh,
referencing?
pavement,
there?
I think when I first mentioned it
Yeah,
to Joe
yep.
was, pavement, we doing pavement patching here and there on the expressway and whatnot.
Starts
You
getting
know, do a
washboard,
section here and a
choppy.
section there, would it be beneficial that, instead of doing it like over X number of blocks or something, to do the whole thing?
We just bite off 6
But-
blocks this year, 6 blocks next year. and
I mean, it's 50 years old.
And what would it look like? I guess the
Eh,
council,
eh, eh,
I'm sorry, the council on beautification has been talking about A Street because we've done so much downtown.
Mhm.
And so they were talking, we did some cursory looking at A Street, and there's like 65 businesses that don't have any greenery in front, any type of landscaping. You could think of Ace, you could think of some of the strip malls. They have none, and so it looks pretty barren. But you have about 35 that do have. You have like Culver's has some.
Mhm.
You have We Trust has some. You have even Family Video has some. And so the idea is, can we create some type of a policy or practice in which if a business wants to put like a bed, like, let's say they have nothing out there and their frontage is so many feet, could they put around their pole with their sign, some type of bed with some type of greenery there? That's pretty, that has perennials, so it's easy to maintain. The whole idea is that, we put baskets downtown and they look beautiful, but then we have to maintain them. So is there some incentive that we could give some of those 65 businesses that if they put a bed along that street with, and so we're looking at that and trying to embrace the mid-state. They have some landscaping classes and stuff like that, plus some nurseries like McKay, as to what would a bed look like and cost, and maybe go to that owner and say, if you put this bed in, now this is all suggestion, but could half of it, for example, be paid, they pay half of it, and the rest of it be taken off of their property tax. Now, one could, for that 1 year,
Mhm.
one could say, well, take it off the property tax, but we don't have to maintain it. And they have to put their skin in the game of paying for half of it. And it would be a bed, just to get some greenery along there. And maybe do, like we were talking about Chestnut and 8, because they're gonna do some new lines and so forth, that like R&R and some other, R&R doesn't have any, so they have this pole, maybe around the pole you can put some type of grass and flowers of some kind that would withstand the plowing or things like that.
Mhm.
Plus give them room to put their snow. You have to, all these things they have to consider. But I think it's an interesting concept, because if you can start to put some green down there, maybe some lots like Ace, I'm using that again, but maybe a tree there. Some of the other open areas where they could put a tree as well as some grass areas. Maybe if we go down and show how the city can work with them, maybe there's a cost, for example, of taking the blacktop around their sign out. Maybe the city could do that as like in kind. Because then you can provide that incentive. And then too, a part of this is that if there's some painting and some places aren't being kept up and they really have a challenge of doing that, can Tom's Paint or some other paint store provide the paint at such and such a cost, and maybe some people volunteer from a church or senior group, or it's just that, can we do something rather than just saying 8th Street? And the idea, can we start to throw out ideas and make changes? So the Council on Beautification is starting to explore. I'm going over to Mid-State with someone, we don't have an appointment yet, but probably next week, to see what size beds would look like. And my thinking is, is that it's the footage on Eighth Street. Like if you have a long area, then maybe we should allocate so much in kind for them versus a smaller one. And see what we could, and I think we could come back with a formula of some kind, and maybe it would be interesting. And then maybe there'd only be, because of cost, maybe 3 businesses a year, I don't know. But that's 3 more than we have before, and maybe, like if you did R&R in that area, you got family video already. The bank has, you have the field, Witter Field, and you have a bank here that has, I can't remember the name of it, but has greenery. And so maybe just a couple of those businesses with some type of beds in front would break up the 8th Street. Then when you go in with some landscape, the pavement, maybe keep that whole thing in mind, would maybe make it start to look attractive.
Yeah, and that I think, you know, should all be looked at, how to beautify it. I think there's gonna have to be discussion, and it's gonna be costly discussion, or how it's gonna be funded as far as
Well, there used to be that
the
facade
street to do.
program.
Hmm?
I said there used to be that facade program that the Encourage was doing that, or the Community Foundation was doing that at one time, but I think that's kind of gone away, and that was just in one area, but. I mean, are you talking about like the overall design of? what
Well, it could
has
be
to
the overall design, but it's also, I think we,
'Cause
you
I
know,
mean,
we
we
keep
kinda-
replacing sections and
Right.
sections here and there, would it be more beneficial to do
Right,
more in a row?
right,
But
and just
may-
kind of
it
march
may
right down
involve-
the
it
street.
Maybe it involves a redesign or something, but
Cause that was,
it's a heavily traveled
that
road.
was set
Oh, yeah.
at 4 lanes. That was set at 4 lanes in what, probably about 88?
Well,
Cause I remember when I was a little kid, and I remember that being 2 lanes across there.
Yeah, long before that, though,
Was it
that
really?
changed, yeah.
Huh.
I'm pretty sure we'd have to, I think back in the 70s.
Depends how far out you go.
Yeah, that's true,
You
yeah.
know, where,
Yeah.
Wittrock is there, it went to 4 lane about the 88.
Did it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that.
I thought it was down by like where Rockies is. I thought that went to 4 lanes around 88 or so, mid to late 80s. Was that before then? Okay, fair enough.
Because the expressway was 77, 78 too, I think.
Mhm.
And the East Street was probably done about that time too.
Okay.
Well, put it on the list.
So anyway, it's, I think, food for thought or something at some point, it's gonna have to it's gonna have to be discussed. I think.
Yeah.
So anyway, anything else by anybody? If not, I guess we're to item 7, and that's adjournment.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn, all those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Ayes have it, meeting adjourned at 7:27. Thank you, good night.
Thank you.